Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Cornhole Culture. My name is Miguel Villa. I am your host, and I have my co-host Tyler and David. How are you guys doing?
Doing well tonight. Thanks for having us on again.
Good. What's up, guys?
How's it going? So, I want to talk briefly about now that people know how to get into the game and they're getting their equipment and so forth. The other day, me and David were teaching somebody how to throw a flat bag, uh, and it's pretty cool to see the progression of somebody throwing a flat bag from not throwing a flat bag at all to actually going flat in the air and landing on the board,
hmm
and so that was pretty cool. But um, noticed that they weren't sure if they wanted to step because I'm a stepper, David's a stepper, or not step. Like Tyler, you don't step when you throw.
Right.
I think that my step evolved from, so I used to bowl in high school, so it felt more comfortable to just step, and I guess I have a better um, aim when I step rather than
hmm
not stepping. Um, David, why did you start stepping, or like why did I know that in the past 2 years you go back and forth to stepping and not stepping, and I think you're like really more of a stepper.
hmm
Um, how did you know that you're just gonna stick with stepping and not go to non-stepping?
So, I've messed around with both stepping and not stepping, standing still. When I was first introduced to the game, 7, 8 years ago, my buddy that taught me how to play stepped. So because he stepped, I just started stepping. He was pretty good at the time, so I just imitated what he did. It felt pretty natural to me. Also, the boards that we played on were super sticky with not very good bags. So learning on sticky conditions, and pretty much all the big tournaments I went to when I was beginning were sticky. So the step definitely helped with that. The reason I started transitioning, or I guess go back and forth now, just because of the bags are so fast. The only way to slow it down is, I feel like, to not step. And I mean, if the board's really fast and you're not using a sticky bag, it's kind of a tough situation there.
hmm
I already throw hard to begin with, so you know, fast boards, fast bags isn't really a good situation for me. Um, but yeah, there's definitely pros and cons for stepping versus non-stepping. But I mean, really, I just started off stepping, and it just kind of felt more natural to me. So I've kind of stuck with that.
Yeah, it feels like when I try to not step, like you said, um, I'm a hard thrower, so not when I step, I throw naturally hard, and when I don't step, it seems my aim is just gone. I go left and right, and I'm not consistent at all. Like Tyler, how I know you mentioned it to me before that you sort of started stepping, and then Vince said, "Don't step, like don't step at all.
Yeah.
You need to practice not stepping." Like, how did that go?
So it was actually the same, story as David's, except exact opposite. When I first got into the game, I think just like everyone else, I think we can all agree that, I don't know how I can't really speak for too many people talking, 5, 6 years ago, but I think a majority of people used to step. I think that it's more common to not step now. David, would you agree?
Yeah, I mean, I see a lot more people standing still now than they used
Sure.
to.
So that's kind of what I'm getting at. I think like the norm used to be stepping, like, oh, you step before you throw the bag, just don't cross the line, blah blah blah. So that's where I started, and then my partner Vince, my buddy Vince, when I got into it, he didn't step. He stood with his feet, both of his toes like right on top of the line, just like that. I thought it was weird. Kind of asked him why, and he just very simply explained it. Like, well, it takes a lot of variables out of your throw. If you throw, you got to worry about not crossing the line. You got to worry about your foot stepping in the same spot every time. And if it's not, all you're doing is just adding to all the variables that can change your throw. So I'm like, okay, that's self-explanatory. I can kind of understand what you're talking about. So I just stopped stepping immediately. That was it. Just I was actually not terrible at it. It did force me to throw a little bit harder because I didn't have the momentum from the stepping. which has kind of trained me to have a really hard throw, which has its benefits, and also gives me a hard time throwing a fast bag. But not stepping is, to me, more consistent. I still can step, but it just kind of messes with my head a little, for all of the reasons you just listed.
Yeah, I mean, for me, so like when I step, I feel like I'm down the center more. My pushes are obviously better. I also feel like I'm a lot better at going around bags when I step. Like I can take better angles with it, and hit more curve shots and split bags, go around bags, roll bags a lot easier. Um, Standing still, my airmail is a lot better. I like, I don't know, blockers are a little bit better, but I mean, I it's weird for me. Like I don't see shots the same when I'm standing still versus when I'm stepping. If I'm at the front of the board, what's running through my mind might be a different shot that I'm envisioning than when I'm stepping. Like okay, I might like see a push or something, or like a curve shot, or like if I'm standing still, it's like oh man, I'm just gonna hit an airmail here.
Right.
My brother has said something similar. So my brother, used to play back in the day, and he was a stepper, just like me, just like my friends, that it started playing with. He dropped a safe on his foot, and he had pins in his toes, for the summer. It wasn't a cast, but he wanted to keep playing. So he transitioned to standing still. He would play like with a chair or anything, and he got used to that. So he's kind of stuck with that ever since, and he kind of has like a weird stance now, but he doesn't step anymore. He just stands with his 2 feet together.
Yeah, he looked funny on ESPN.
Yeah,
he was just standing like perfectly still, just throwing.
Feet right in line, right next to each other, standing straight up, and yeah, I mean it's because he couldn't move. He dropped a safe on his foot, and so he got used to that. I mean, he back in the day, he had a really good airmail. Like, I mean, it taught him to hit airmails because he couldn't push anything because he literally couldn't move. He was like in a chair. He was immobilized. So, but his airmail got really good back then, but not so much anymore.
Yeah, Adam Hisner, he was in the last episode, always tells me, stop stepping. Like, you need to stop stepping. You're going to get a lot better. You're going to be way more accurate. Like you said, Tyler, all the variables like go away because like you're not stepping in the same spot every single time. So it's like there's way more movement when you're stepping. So like with your muscle memory, when you're standing still, it's like, automatic. It's like a robot. But like when you're stepping, it's like a lot more muscles are actually, in effect. So like your whole body has to, I guess, memorize, all like what you're doing over and over again, rather than just when you're standing still, just your arm just going.
Yeah. Shout out to Matt Sorrells. He did like an hour, 15-minute long Q&A. I watched quite a bit of it. He talked, about what it takes to be a consistent player, and how he became consistent. And, one of the main things that he said was that how he doesn't obviously step, and that all he focuses on is, pulling his arm back and stopping it he holds his arm out forward and then back forward. So there's 3 key points: where you hold it, where you come back, and where you let go. When you're stepping, you're worrying about more components of, you're stepping and then keeping your balance and all of these things. And he says, when I want to throw an airmail, I don't remember if he said it was higher or lower, but he's like, when I want to throw an airmail, I hold my hand a little bit higher, which gives me a little bit more of a backswing. Just naturally, I throw the bag a little bit harder. So when I heard that, I'm like, okay, yeah, that's true. So since then, not much has changed. I haven't revamped my throw, but I focus more on how far do I pull back my arm and how far do I, extend it when I'm letting go. I could only imagine how much harder that would be to focus on my arm and where it, like I said, if I had to focus on so many other things. So that's why I mentioned variables. I think it's important. But if you're one of those players that really doesn't bother you and it's muscle memory, like you said, it's just what you're used to, chances are you probably step the same almost every time.
Yeah, and like watching Jay Rubin on ESPN, like his motion is the same exact thing every time.
Mm-hmm.
You see all these players like Ryan Smith, same thing. They
Right.
have like this like 3-point motion, like
Mm-hmm.
we're talking about that. They throw and it's like they look like robots. I mean, it's just like same thing over and over again.
Yeah.
But I think so. For the listeners and new players, you do have two choices. Either you stand still, which has a lot of pros on just being way more consistent and getting better consistency. Um, I think your airmail, like David said, is gonna get better
Mm-hmm.
when you stand still. Um, when I tried to like stand still and not step anymore for like a month or two, I noticed that my airmail was better standing still, but just my consistency overall, it wasn't worth going to standing still. Like I just don't have that time to practice not standing still for a year with like when you have to compete, in such high level. So,
Yeah.
um, Jamie Graham now, uh, he's always been standing still. Am I right, David?
No, he was a stepper.
He's a stepper.
Like
Yeah.
when he won King of Cornhole, I'm pretty sure that was like his first tournament. He transitioned into not stepping. Like
Yeah,
that was his
and
first tournament ever not stepping.
I think
Won
Jordan
King of
Kamba
Cornhole.
too. Jordan Kamba
Yeah,
went from not stepping to standing, or stepping to
stepping.
standing still.
Yeah.
Um, so I think,
I mean, it seems like Matt Guy's working on that right now too. So
yeah, Matt Guy in the last tournament over the weekend, and all his Facebook videos, he
yeah,
switched from stepping to not stepping, and Matt Guy has been stepping this whole time. Like you
yeah.
rarely
He's
see him.
he's one of those guys that like changes up his throw like crazy. I mean, if you look at
Right.
videos from 6 years ago, there was a period when he wasn't stepping. There was a period when like he was swinging his arms back and forth. So like he's always changing things up. But yeah, I mean, people do change. People do transition.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I think just everybody's transitioning to not stepping, but uh, now there's a whole other uh, new, I guess, with stepping or not stepping is when you're standing still and then like you throw the bag and your momentum goes forward and you step over the line. So now that's a huge controversy. Uh, everybody is either with the rule or against the rule on when you release the bag and then you step over the line, if that should count. David, what do you think? Do you think it should count? What's your opinion about that rule?
I mean, like I have no issue with it. Like it doesn't bug me at all. But I just think like the game would just be so much simpler, and we just get rid of so much controversy if you just got rid of it. I mean, people that don't know the game very well, or people that complain about it, say it's a distraction. Um, I think it would just be way easier in the rule book. Cause way less drama if it was just taken out. Um, I mean, if the players are doing it, say, there's no benefit of doing it, then, they should have no issue taking it away. I mean, I feel like there's just a downside and it can just like snowball and get out of hand. Like if a player steps and then continues, it takes 2 or 3 steps down the line, then they have to turn around, walk back to the board. It's wasting time. The player next to them has to wait for them to shoot. They can complain about distractions. Then at the same time, what if someone does release the bag after they had stepped,
Right, and how can you catch that? Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, like, 99% of the people are releasing it before, but like, what if,
Right.
People stop doing it or just take 1 or 2, that's not going to be caught and that's just going to cause way more drama. I think it's just, you can avoid a lot of controversy just by eliminating it. I mean, it's not supposed to be a benefit at all, so why not
Yeah,
get rid of it?
like Jamie Graham, he started doing it. He never used to do it before,
Yep.
and he doesn't need it. He's the best player right now in the world. He doesn't need to do that. So it's like, Ryan Smith, same thing. He said I read it, I think on a tweet or something that he tried to switch it up a little bit during this time off period, but I haven't really seen him changing that much. But Tyler, you said that there is a competitive advantage to doing it.
Well, there's definitely a competitive advantage to a follow through, just like any other sport. Stepping over the line, if you're truly releasing the bag before the line, it doesn't give you competitive advantage because you're still throwing, 30 feet from behind the line to the front of the hole, right? You still have to make that same throw as everyone else. I've seen it compared to two things. Maybe it was in Addicted to Cornhole. Someone wanted to have an actual conversation about this and get to the bottom and get some input from other people. Some people were comparing it to basketball, where you can shoot the ball, release from behind the 3-point line, and your follow through is, landing in front, but that's okay. Other people compared it to bowling, and in my opinion, cornhole is much more comparable to bowling than it is to basketball. And in bowling, you cannot step over the line when you throw your bowling ball. Mm-hmm. So does it really make a difference? No, not really. Should there be a rule that bans it? Probably not. But it can be a distraction. And if it gets, I'm talking about right now, like Jamie Graham, he does not have a super exaggerated, obnoxious step. It's a small little step. Same with Ryan Smith. Same. But David's right when he says, one step turns into two, and two step turns into three, and then turning around and blah, blah, blah. And you can really throw off a rhythm shooter by.
How do you write that into a rule book too? Like, I mean, exactly. You would have to get so specific. I mean, like me, I take a couple steps forward. Miguel takes a couple steps forwards. What if we exaggerate that? Because, they're not, those people aren't stepping. They're standing still and stepping over. What if there's someone taking a big step, and because that one big step leans over, carries so much momentum so that they have to take a second step, past.
Right.
Okay.
I mean, if we let it keep going in this direction, what it could come down to is a second line that you can't pass after you throw from behind the first line.
Exactly.
So
David's
absolutely
snowballing.
right,
it's going to spiral out of control. Like, that's why I think it'd just be way simpler, to get rid of it. Yeah. Like, what if they write right into it? You can only take one step after. Okay. What happens if that player trips and takes a second one after, or falls, because they're trying to limit themselves to only taking that one step after, I just think that, we'll get out of hand quickly by, allowing it and continuing to grow from there.
Yeah. I think, I see it more when people try to push bags, even if you don't do it at all.
I'm guilty.
Like, if you don't do it on a consistent basis, like, you just stand still and you don't do that little step every single time. But when you actually try and make a hard push or something, you find, even myself, I find myself like leaning forward. And I guess again, back to bowling, I'm used to like making sure I do not cross the line. So when I do either have my momentum going forward, I always seem to go to the side. So if you see me play, because I don't want to cross the line, even though I already release the bag, I go to the side of the box, and like that messes with me because now like my momentum is going not forward but to the side. Sometimes I do go, when I do extend myself and go forward, obviously I'm way better shooter. But again, I always think there's always that line. If you stand still and you have to push a bag and you have to do a hard push, and they took away the rule, like you're gonna have to take a step back to make sure that you don't cross the line when you do a hard push. Even now, I see players that stand still, they need to do a hard push. They go back to they step. They have to step to take it just because
Chris Novi, Matt Morton. I mean, there's plenty of people that do that. Even Windsor does that every once in a while.
Oh yeah, Windsor. Yeah, I see Windsor do it a lot, where he goes back to stepping on a push.
With like a real hard push, yeah.
Right.
I mean, Novi does that all the time, yeah.
So David, like you said, one step is going to turn into 2 steps or 3 steps. I was talking to Tyler earlier before he came on, is that people do, when you step over, your opponent, you're waiting for you to come back to the box.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, how long do you have to wait for them to come back to the box? And if it's, the same, if it's a different time every time, I'm a, rhythm shooter, now it's throwing me off. And it goes to another topic of kind of long, neither, it's not a timeout, but right now the rule is you have 20 seconds to throw the bag after your opponent does, when the bag stops. There has been plenty of times where people, especially during doubles, they strategize in between throws.
Mm-hmm.
And some people complain like, hey, like, it's a timeout. Like, you throw the bag, like, why are you waiting so long? Why are you have 20 seconds. So it seems that some people don't mind strategizing in between throws. But if some people are taking advantage of it and they're taking 40 seconds and, they don't have no timeouts left, now they're sitting there just strategizing. But, how flexible can we make that rule too, on throwing after 20 seconds? Tyler, you said down in Florida in the National, you and Vince were doing that a lot, and people were getting upset.
There was one team, one guy on the team, the guy I was throwing against, he told me that he didn't care, but his partner was getting upset because, hey, do you want me to leave that block? Do you want me to go around this? How about this? And I throw rather quickly. I don't have a long, Dave Sutton kind of like, approach.
Or Damon Dennis.
Yeah, right. So it's not anything like that. As soon as the other person's bag stops, I'm usually throwing right away. So I can afford the 10 or 15 seconds to ask him, what do you want me to do? Right. Matter of fact, we went back because he talked about like protesting the game. We went back that night and rewatched the game. And like, there might've been one throw that was like 22 seconds or something like that. But that was after he, that was after he got upset. What it really was one, we didn't take a timeout the whole game. So it wasn't like we didn't have any timeouts and we were trying to stretch it because we didn't have timeouts. We didn't need them. We were just talking, hey, blah, blah, blah. So we figured it out and we did it and it was okay. But the guy was upset, saying, that counts as a timeout. You already used your timeout. And we're like, in the middle of the game, we got into like some kind of argument. Like, when did we use our timeout? And he's like, the last time when you asked him if you want it. And then we're like, no, you have 20 seconds to the bag. So long story short, some people that kind of stuff really throws them out of their rhythm, and bothers them more than others. But even the guy on the other end of the board, he was like, I don't think anything you're doing is wrong. With me and my other partner, we do the same thing. So maybe this guy was new or whatever.
Yeah. I mean, I have similar stories. When I first started, one of the first big tournaments I traveled to, out of the state, this was back when I was back living in Ohio. I noticed that different regions, have different playing styles and, they're just used to what they're used to. But there was a lot of guys, this was like on the East Coast, this might have been in like Virginia or something, but like there was same sort of argument, doubles game, players talking to their partners about, strategy shots. And I was watching one of the other teams from Ohio, like they're in the Final Four or something, and the opposing team kept making comments about like, all Ohio players take too much time. They talk to their partners about all their shots. So I mean, I noticed that, one of the first tournaments I was ever at, that they grouped all of us together as all the Ohio players like to talk about their shots and strategy, and they do it on purpose to get in other players' heads, and they're going on and on about this just to throw us out of our rhythm. At the same time, like, people get upset if you're playing in an outside tournament and you're waiting for the wind to die down.
Right.
I mean, no one wants to throw in a gust of wind. Like, I have no problem if someone sits there and waits, even a minute.
Right.
Like, I want them to. I want to win fairly. Like, I don't want to win I mean,
because of
the
the wind.
the wind I mean, if the wind takes it, yeah, it's great. I'm not going to complain about it. But if you're over there taking your time because the wind's, coming, I'm not gonna say anything, because I'm gonna do the same thing. Like, I wouldn't want to be forced to throw in a big gust of wind. So anyways, yeah, just like there's different types of cornhole etiquette, I think. And if you're talking with your partner, it's like an unwritten rule, like, as people say, like, gentleman's sport, gentleman's game,
Right.
don't, respect your opponent. And
Yeah, I mean, I don't mind it at all.
no, I don't.
If people strategizing or taking their time.
But that just might be because we're in the Midwest, and
Yeah,
we're
true.
all used to everyone doing it around here. But while
Mhm.
maybe like East Coast or other places, like they might have a hard time with that. So
Just like anything else, this could very easily be abused.
Oh yeah, for sure.
You could argue by taking 45 seconds that it is a timeout, and that's totally fine. But this whole
Yeah.
thing at the Florida National was like a different ball game for me. We were just doing what we normally do, taking 18 seconds before a throw at max when we needed to really figure something out. 85 to 95% of the time, we already know what to do. But the 2 or 3
Right.
times during that game that we did it, it really upset this guy, and it was just kind of, you kind of wondered if there was any other reason besides just maybe he didn't like us, or maybe they were, wanted to throw us out of our rhythm. But coming from, if there was any kind of a spectrum between rhythm shooter and whatever the opposite is, I would be more on the rhythm side than I would anything else. Not like, if you take 10 seconds, you'll just crush me, and I'll just fall out. But people taking their time doesn't even bother me. Like, if anybody was to complain, it would be people like me. Like, oh, I hate when people take too long because my game's just not the same. I feel like you can, you can take all the time you need.
You could definitely throw people off, though. I mean, if
Oh,
you're
absolutely.
rhythm shooting and you're only taking 5 seconds in between each throw, and then the next throw you stop and you wait 15, 20 seconds and then you throw, like, it's gonna mess up.
Yeah, I've done it.
I've done it a lot. And David, when you said Ohio players, Cody Henderson, first player that popped in my head, he loves to get in your head, and
Yep.
he could do the infamous an hour and 30-minute game against Damon Dennis down in Cobbs, and I think 2017 or 2018. They took, and again, if you don't report it to the director saying, hey, enforce the 20-second rule, if each player is taking a minute, and again, it's a gentleman's game. If you're fine with it and your opponent's fine with it, then you guys could take a minute each to throw. And that's exactly what they were doing. And in that game, Damon Dennis and Cody Henderson were legit waiting 40 to a minute after each bag. They would walk out of the box, go take a lap, and then come back and throw. I mean, it was ridiculous.
Yeah.
It was.
I'm sure most people listening to this know about this game, because pretty much everyone knows about this game. When Miguel says this game took like an hour and a half, he's not exaggerating. The game actually took an hour and a half, and it put that bracket way behind at Cobbs. So yeah.
Yeah, and it was fun to watch too, because it was at that point, it was just such a mind game, and just watching the mind game was like, I remember watching the game right in the beginning. I left the room, went I think to the other side where they were playing double, or to the other side, and then when I came back an hour later, they were still playing the game. I was like, what's going on? And by that time, there was a huge like group of people just watching them, and nobody said anything. If Cody didn't snitch on Damon, and Damon didn't, they didn't get no directors involved or anything, because they both like playing that mind game, and it was a great match to experience and watch. And but again, that's why you don't want to.
It's just another one of those unwritten rule. I mean, I guess
Right.
that one's actually written. Like, you have to
Yeah, and
before
you
if
yeah,
you wanted to be enforced, you have to
get a
bring
director.
it, you get a
Yeah,
director and bring it up,
and you want to enforce that rule too, just because again that bracket was held up so long. So now when you're a director running a tournament, you have a time limit on when either your venue is going to close or people have to go home or whatever. So you just have to.
It's just a tough situation to be in because no one wants to go and report something like that, and
Right.
that just takes you away from the game. Then I mean, I was in a game like that last year at Cobb. Shout out to Rob Guthrie. Everyone knows that Rob likes to take his time. I was up like 18-4 on him, and then he started taking forever. Like whenever there was a big shot, he would walk up to the board, look around, ask me if he's used all his timeouts yet. The game took 57 minutes, I think it was.
Wow.
I ended up losing. I blew an 18-4 lead. Rob Guthrie, thanks, man. But yeah, it didn't even cross my mind about
Going to get a director.
Yeah, no, yeah. That's just not on the forefront of people's minds, and I'm focusing on the game.
Yeah.
I mean,
For people like me, I'm sorry, Dave, go ahead.
No, you're fine. Like I was just saying, like I was close to winning, so I thought. I was like, okay, I just need to throw a couple more four baggers, and I'll get out of this. But
for people like me, and there has to be others. I've never reported a rule or reported something or got something enforced, and I've never had something enforced on me. Are you supposed to challenge the game in the middle of it, afterwards, as it's going on? How are you supposed to go about maybe stepping too far over the line or taking too long?
Yeah,
it's
the
got to
game is
happen
going
during.
on.
Yeah.
So
if the game finishes, it's too late afterwards.
Right. Yeah.
Okay.
Well, once the game is done, that's it. You can't enforce it. Like if somebody complains like, oh, I lost because they were taking a minute after you throw, like, well, you should have reported it. Like,
figures, yeah.
Just because you lost, But I think there is situations where people report something and saying, hey, like, after the game, saying, hey, this guy's taking too long between their throws or something. It's like, can you say something to them so that way when they play other games, it doesn't become an issue.
Mm-hmm.
So that's where, like, us as directors, we go and like, hey, like, people are complaining that you're doing this or that. Like, just, try not to do it as much or try not to do it, because if somebody brings it up during the game, we're going to have to enforce it.
Yeah,
so
good point.
There's people do come up to us and say, hey, like, this person is abusing this rule or something. But after the fact, and that way we could tell them before they even start the game. So it doesn't become an issue.
Same thing with bag challenges. Once a game starts, you can't challenge your bag. Once a game's complete, you can't challenge your bag. Even if it's, determined that the bag's illegal after the fact, you didn't challenge it beforehand, the game's still going to count. They're not going to be able to use those bags going forward. They can't use it in any more games, but they're not going to forfeit the game that already, took place, already happened, just because you lost. So you're supposed to be able to check out a player's bags before the game, during the down and back. But once that game starts, you miss your opportunity to challenge a bag.
Yeah, so I think that's all the time we have. It's definitely a lot of good topics to look forward to. For the new listeners and new people playing, you do have a choice of stepping and not stepping. A lot of great players step, and a lot of great players stand still. So it's however you feel comfortable doing, stick to it.
And find a just whatever you're comfortable with. Find a bag that you like, that suits your style, and stick with it. I mean, switching it up kind of hurts, but I mean, just find what you're comfortable with and go from there.
Ryan Smith, stop stepping over the line. I'm gonna call you out next time I see you and play you. And then Damon Dennis, he needs to throw that bag and not take his time. All right, guys. Thanks for joining me tonight, and I'll see you on the next one.
Thanks, Miguel.
Thanks, Miguel.